I think racist is more effective as an adjective than a noun. But more importantly, what we need to be doing is acknowledging harmful and oppressive behaviors and practices when these Black creators, when marginalized creators are speaking about these issues. Like, what is it that we are actually concerned about as opposed to the language we use or the way we're expressing it? Hey you guys, so this is a video that I wouldn't normally do. I never really do like response videos or like reaction videos. This one in particular I consider more of a response because I'm not going to be like watching the video with y'all. But as you can tell by the title and thumbnail, I'm gonna be responding to a video that CoryxKenshin uploaded earlier. I don't even know how many days it's been at this point, but it's about YouTube and some of their issues with the way they flag videos, the way, and ultimately also the way they flag certain videos from certain creators and not other videos from other creators. A lot of the favoritism that plays into YouTube enforcing policies, enforcing rules, and just the overall way they treat some creators over others. So if you don't already follow CoryxKenshin, I'm gonna link his video in the description below. I originally was not gonna make a response video to this because when I first saw the title, I'm like, of course, like, as a creator and also as a consumer on this platform, like, it's no surprise to me that, you know, YouTube, you know, promotes certain people and certain people get to grow in other ways that other creators do not. But then I kept seeing his video resurfacing. I saw creators from also like different like industries, like even outside of like the gaming niche, I started seeing other creators talk about the situation. And so seeing that sort of reaction and how like you know, this conversation wasn't going away, it kind of led me to want to respond to some of the things and also just expand on some of my own experiences and thoughts that kind of came up as, you know, I was seeing more discussions around this situation. So today I'm going to be putting on makeup. Welcome to my beauty channel. Normally when I do these sit down videos, I'm like at my desk, but I have a lot to do today and I'm kind of running behind. So I was like, let's just make this a get ready with me as I talk. So yeah, I wasn't even planning to upload this video today or at all, but I don't know, I just had some thoughts and I just felt like I wanted to make a video about it. So here we are.
As one of the biggest Black creators on the platform, I want you to hear it from my mouth that there is some shady business going on behind the scenes at YouTube.
So obviously, as the title suggests, like one of the main accusations that Cory made against YouTube is the fact that they definitely have their favorites when it comes to the creators you see pushed and just who, you know, gets the most love on the YouTube homepage. And this is one of those things where it's like not really a shock to me. Or many other, you know, BIPOC creators. Like, if you go to, this is something we've been talking about for a while. Like, when you go to the homepage, if you sign out of your YouTube account, go to the homepage, there's definitely going to be, you know, some lack of melanin of the people you see promoted. I talked about this in a video I did about claiming space for Black women in gaming. We actually talked about that, how we can very clearly see who gets spotlighted and who doesn't. To me, that was like the basics. Like, of course, especially as a person of color, a Black woman, you see the differences. This world was set up for white success, not just on YouTube, but just, you know, in general in the workforce, whether or not, you know, you're a part of the creator economy or not. So the fact that you don't really get to see the Black creators highlighted, like that's almost like, that's like the start of the conversation. That's what we're used to talking about. So we already kind of know about that, like the favoritism, the racism, like you already see the creators who get pushed, you know, beyond YouTube's like, you know, top 2 Black creators they like to highlight in whichever niche. You don't really get to see a lot of us unless you as a viewer intentionally go out of your way to follow and support diverse creators.
Surprise!
Oh, hi. Hi, Relius. Have a hug. Mwah. Another point he made in his video that I wanted to touch on is this idea of like YouTube sort of just pandering to their Black or otherwise marginalized creators, but particularly Black. We're focusing on the Black experience today in this video, but with a lot of, and he gave the example of like having YouTube Black or like for Black History Month, highlighting certain Black creators. And he talks about really the double standard of having, like these performative acts of like diversity and highlighting Black creators whereas when there's like an actual issue with like the way that Black creators get treated differently, like those systemic, like algorithmic, if that's even a word, algorithm based things that are not supporting Black creators or that disproportionately affect Black and, BIPOC creators. He was basically saying that like when you talk about how you want to support and highlight Black voices, but then simultaneously when Black creators have an issue with how your platform works and you don't treat it with the same urgency or sincerity, and you continue to kind of disproportionately reinforce rules, it kind of, defeats the purpose of saying that you are a company about diversity and inclusion. And this is a point where I kind of had a couple of different opinions about. One thing I definitely wanted to, add to the conversation is the fact that because biased AI exists, and there's been different studies about just different examples of how AI can be biased, such as like automated syncs who are not wired to recognize Black skin. That is a thing. And also like algorithms, they clearly have a bias because the people who make algorithms are biased. So it's, not accurate to say that AI is like a objective system, because it's not. And again, there are studies about this, and I'm not going to go super in depth in this video just because this is more of like a chatty response as opposed to like, my video essays where I go more into history and breaking everything down. But yeah, since biased AI exists and also just systems of privilege and power exist, like that makes it necessary for us to have programs and organizations that particularly cater to highlighting Black voices or other marginalized voices. So it's not necessarily the YouTube Black that I have an issue with. However, and this is a big however, and this is what I think Cory was kind of hinting to, even if he didn't fully explain it. What I do have a problem with is companies, not just YouTube, but just companies and brands in general, talking about how they're all about diversity and inclusion. And they start, enforcing this diversity narrative without the inclusion. In Cory's case, like inclusion would be like having his channel and other creators' channels on his level be treated with the same amount of scrutiny. Like everybody's videos should be enforced in the same way if this was really inclusive, or even like having his appeal like not denied in the first place, because when Cory did his initial appeal, it was denied, and he actually had to talk to his YouTube rep to get somebody to like look further into it. So it's even things like, Black people, like our word on its own is not even valid. Like that would have been an example of inclusion, like taking our concerns seriously the first time, not just when you get called out. I get there's different teams on YouTube who work on different things. Like people who work on the YouTube Black, campaign are probably not the people working at the policy team. So I get that. But as a company, I can definitely see how like this push for diversity and then the not following through with the actions and the interpersonal experiences with Black creators, how your, push for diversity kind of falls null when you're not actually backing up what you say with what you do. Like what you say, you support Black creators, but then when they come to you with something, you don't actually take their concern seriously, or they just get different treatment. So it's making sure that what you're saying is actually aligning with what you're doing. And that's where diversity kind of falls into tokenism. So I have no problem with companies, not just YouTube again, but like brands in general, being intentional about including diverse creators in, their work. But I do have a problem when those creators are being treated differently, because that is when we cross the line from diversity to tokenism, like I said. or pandering. I don't have like a lid brush, so I'm trying to like use my finger. Listen, I'm not a beauty channel for a reason. I need to get like an angled brush. And an example I want to give about the tokenism, the first thing I thought of is if you follow like lifestyle like YouTubers or like those young vloggers like several years ago, like those teenage vloggers, there was a situation with this company called Dote, D-O-T-E, where basically it was a prime perfect example of a company trying to act like they care about diversity but then really only be using the Black and other non-white creators or influencers in their marketing when it benefits them. I'm actually gonna link a couple videos down below that I think explain it well. I think Tiffany Ferg, she's one of my favorite commentary creators. She did a whole video just explaining the whole situation to begin with. So that's great to start with if you don't have context. But then I would really recommend also going to watch the creators, especially like the people of color, like the young like Black girls especially, their videos in particular, who were talking about their experiences and how they were being mistreated by this brand who said they cared about diversity, but they clearly had different treatment than their white influencer counterparts. So that's like another example I want to give. I want to also kind of show that this issue is not just particular to gaming or just particular to YouTube itself. Like this is an issue just in work, in not just the creator economy, but just, you know, in businesses, in life, in society. These practices happen all the time. So if you're trying to learn more the difference between tokenism, diversity, and kind of the, you know, issues about that, I think those are really interesting videos and to break that down. So I'll link those in the description if any of you guys are curious. All right, so I winged my eyeliner. It's kind of shaky. Probably, you know, you only really see it if you're looking up close, but I'm gonna try to correct this. Another point that Cory made I wanted to touch on is how he kind of did like a disclaimer in his video about how he can't necessarily prove that race had everything to do with the way he was treated. And again, like, I feel like this is kind of late to say this, but if you want full context, be sure to just check out the video, his original video, just because I'm not going to be going over that today. It's like 13 minutes long. So if you want the full context, it's probably best that you have already seen his video. Because he explains his situation, and I'm just kind of responding with like my own experience and thoughts. But yeah, so he basically makes a point that like you can't really prove that a brand or a company is racist entirely, you know? Like it's one of those things where racism doesn't have like specific like actions that are ascribed to it. Like, oh, if you do this thing, if you know, spam the N-word in the chat, like that is racism. And honestly, something I wanted to provide a little bit more nuance to is I feel like, especially when it comes to creators, I feel like the most distressing and the most harmful, honestly, types of racism aren't even the one with, you know, like overt bigots, like people using racial slurs and, you know, calling you names and stuff. Like, that's obviously not good, so I'm not trying to say, like, oh, yes, I'd rather be called, you know, XYZ. I'd rather none of it happen. But I think something else I wanted to bring up is that it's a lot of the times those gaslighting comments or those microaggressions, like engagement with your content that is not overt, but still has the same kind of just detrimental effects, you know, psychologically. It's the subtle racism, the microaggressions, people gaslighting you in the comments, telling you that your experiences is not true. All of these create really invisible wounds is what they are, that send you messages that you don't deserve to exist in the body that you do, and you don't deserve to take up space on this platform. And I've seen this happen to various creators, whether, you know, on YouTube or Twitch or other platforms. And I guess the reason I bring this up is because my first video I posted on the channel was called Growing Up Black on YouTube Gaming. I had 0 subscribers when I posted that video, but my channel has grown very fast over the past, you know, year and a half I've been on here. But when I got placed on Gaming Creator on the Rise, say like a few months after I posted that video, I got an influx of like trolls and like, you know, gaslighting comments, people arguing the folks in my comments, like people essentially just telling us that as Black people and as Black women especially, our experiences on this site aren't true, that we should stop complaining, like just all different types of, you know, not great stuff. And obviously like YouTube cannot regulate every single comment that's ever made on a video, but something that like a thought that I did have, which I'm not going to like dismiss, is why does it feel like it's always up to like the creator, and especially creators of color, when they have like an issue, or if their community is like, I don't want to say at stake, because it wasn't like, life or death or anything, but when there's a problem with the way people are engaging with your content, why is it always up to like the creators to like manually remove like the racism and bigotry that's in your comment section? And YouTube did send me an email a couple days before I was featured on the homepage. It was one of those automated emails, so it wasn't like particularly specific, tailored to me when I got placed on there. And also I didn't know which videos they were going to choose, so them obviously choosing that video as Creator on the Rise and placing me on the Explore page exposed my channel to a lot of people who my content was not created for, and people who just did not have good intentions. But anyways, back to what I was saying, in that email, there was never like, apart from like saying you should maybe block links, or here are some, like chat or comment regulations we have in place just in case you get trolly comments or whatever. If I can find the email, I'll put it up on the screen. But it wasn't anything I think that particularly helped the case of the subtle microaggressions and gaslighting that was in my comments that I had to personally remove and block people from. Like, there was no tool set up in place to help with those sort of disguised versions of racism. But I feel like most people, especially people of color who talk about, controversial topics, because, the moment you bring up race, all of a sudden it's controversial. Most of them can relate to like the not well-intended people who show up on your videos, And I feel like at this point there should be just something I feel like YouTube could do to kind of help make it feel less daunting, especially as a small creator who all of a sudden had all these people and all this attention directed to my channel without really any prior knowledge of how to handle all this. Like, I felt like that is just kind of one example of like, I feel like there should be some sort of regulation that's not up to the creator themselves that can also kind of help with unwanted comments or unwanted tomfoolery on the channel. So that's just an example, a personal example that I could think of. A lot of this sort of, I feel like the most harmful racism isn't even the overt or the aggressive types. It's like the subtle forms, the gaslighting, or the things that come off as innocent. People dismissing your experiences and telling them that they're not true. Like, and to be honest, I don't know what the answer would be for something like that. Like, this is not a solutions video, but I'm like, YouTube is a multi-million-dollar company. I feel like they can implement something to protect the health and the mental well-being of their most marginalized creators. The closest thing I can kind of compare this to is like over the past couple years, but especially like at the end of last year, like in the fall season of last year, Twitch was having a lot of issues with hate raids, and you can read up on that more, but essentially just like, again, it's like the idea of like racist and bigotry just in your chat against your will. And Twitch took like, months to release more regulation features, and other platforms like Streamlabs were able to release better and more effective like chat regulation features and deleting chat before Twitch actually, released those things or formally addressed them. And honestly, I don't know all the details about the whole Twitch situation. I was following it for a bit there. But it kind of is that same idea where it's like, these things happen to especially marginalized creators, and there doesn't really seem to be support from YouTube to protect us and to keep us safe, to make us feel welcome, I guess, on your platform. Like, why is it always up to us as the creator, the marginalized creators especially, to fend for ourselves when we have an issue, whether it's related to safety or whether it's just related to unfair treatment? Like, why is it that when we have an issue, we have to fend for ourselves and fight for ourselves? Like, that's just something I've noticed. Okay, let me do my blush. Another sort of idea that I definitely wanted to talk about related to this situation, now I'm kind of just talking about just sort of what I've noticed in terms of like responses to his videos. Those are kind of like what I just said before, is basically kind of my thoughts of just like responding to some of the points he brought up actually within his videos himself. So now I'm just going to talk about something I just noticed. So something that I noticed is this idea of whose voice when it comes to conversations around, you know, oppressive systems and practices, like whose voice is actually valued within these conversations. Like, I just want to know, why is it always like take the black exceptionalism to say the least, which again, this is not directed towards Cory. I respect Cory. I am a fan of his content. I'm a subscriber of him. So this is not to say like, this is not to be anything malicious towards him, but it's just hard to ignore the fact that like when one of like the top black creators speaks out about these issues, now it seems like all of a sudden it becomes more of a conversation and people are taking it more seriously. And YouTube has yet to respond by the time I'm filming this video. So, but it has been like all over YouTube. I've seen it in several, like this conversation, this video appear in several different spaces. So I definitely feel like YouTube is going to respond eventually because it's kind of hard to ignore. Cory's video was on trending for, a few days. So I feel like the situation YouTube is going to have to respond to regardless. Ooh, and I don't know if I should have put the highlight up there. I'm gonna cover that up. But yeah, like I was saying, why does it always take like the top, like black people at the top like talking about their experiences for people to actually take this seriously? Because again, this conversation is nothing new. Like the mistreatment of black people on different platforms is nothing new. I was telling you examples of the hate raids earlier on Twitch that were happening. But I also wanted to bring some intersectionality into this with like also acknowledging that like black women especially have spoken out about their mistreatment in the gaming industry and also just in different spaces in general. But it always seems like when black women or when the people who aren't with the millions of subscribers at the top, like when we speak out about things in the system that are unjust and don't, make this creator economy a level playing field, like our concerns aren't held with the same amount of weight or taken as seriously. It doesn't become a like trending topic when black women are talking about their, these same issues essentially. And so I just wanted to bring up that issue with like misogynoir and how, it takes a prominent male creator to address these problems for them to become a conversation. Going back to like the Twitch hate raid example, when these black women especially, like I know Wreck-It Raven was the person who started the day off Twitch thing that like, was basically kind of like a call to action for people to stop streaming and actually acknowledge like the mistreatment that is happening to black people on this platform and how Twitch has done nothing about the hate raids. Like that whole thing was started by Wreck-It Raven. She was getting her like personal information doxxed. I know Candidly Kayla, she was very vocal like about addressing this issue and she got targeted even more. Again, I think she had her address like leaked. And it almost just feels like, one, we have to fend for ourselves. I feel like as black creators on the platform, and then especially the more intersections you fall at, the more I feel like you just have to be aware of how like these platforms, these industries were not created to protect you. Ooh, do I want to do a matte red lip or do I want to do a glossy lip? I think I want to do a gloss instead. What was I saying? I think I was saying like that's kind of like an intersection of black people having to, one, speak out against these issues for change to happen, and then two, once we do speak out, it's like, why is our like safety or like the state of our channel like at risk now that we talked about how we were mistreated? Now we have, we might be shadow banned, or if we talk about racism, our videos might get demonetized, or we might get doxxed, we might be hit harder or heavier regarding the issue that we're speaking out on. And I definitely see that disproportionately affecting a lot of black women when they speak out than our other like male counterparts, even if they may be a person of color. And so that is just something else that I have noticed. It's like, why aren't the concerns of like black women taken seriously? Like when we were originally talking about Twitch hate raids, when black women who maybe, or just people who have smaller accounts are talking about these, you know, issues, it's almost like, why is it like the two top Black people at the top that these companies respect? It takes them speaking out and not everybody else before for this concern to be taken seriously, for this issue to be addressed. Like, why is it that like when Black women that we talk about things, there's like an assumption that we're hysterical or we're just making stuff up or like we don't have proof or we're over emotional, overreacting? Like, why is it up to the assumption of women to kind of like calm down, and that same amount of urgency is not placed on the change that needs to occur that is causing us to become upset? Okay, so I finished the makeup. This is the look today. I feel like there's also an issue of the need to apologize for being angry or upset or for having emotions, especially when it comes to these situations where Black people or other, you know, marginalized creators like get or just other marginalized people get mistreated. There's always an assumption that like we all need to have like a rational, like emotionless reaction to our dehumanization, to the minimization of our pain and our concerns. I feel like even if you are not a Black creator, like you can feel empathy and you can have anger for the mistreatment of other people. Like, why is that on us as the peoples who are being victimized in the situation, like to have a level-headed reaction to, like, you know, like I was saying, dehumanization? Like, we should all be angry about, you know, people being mistreated. So that's something else I think is important to note, is that there's a lot of like, I feel like apologizing over the way Black people are responding or how we express ourselves when we talk about these issues, when the real problem should be like, why are these issues occurring in the first place? What can we do to solve this in the first place? The attention always tends to be shifted onto the wrong things whenever we bring up racism or any, you know, hot button topic. And also, like, another intersection that's important is, like, especially when Black women speak out about things, there's also a stigma of, like, you know, if they say, or just if a woman in general is more assertive with the way that they speak, it's almost like up to us to calm down, or that people kind of use that as a way to invalidate what is happening. It's like the way we express it. And I definitely have the privilege of, like, people say the way I explain things is very calm, and I'm just not naturally the type of Black girl that, you know, is gonna go tell you what you is and what you is not gonna do. I definitely acknowledge that it, like, the way that I speak is palatable, I hate that word, to a lot of diverse people or white people, let's be honest. But that doesn't make people who don't speak like me or who are angry, rightfully so, about these topics, that doesn't make their arguments any less valid. Just because that's not naturally the way that I speak, like, that doesn't mean that the way I express this is any better or worse than the way that other people decide to express that. So that is something else I just wanted to note. Black folk, we've been talking about the unfair treatment of us on just content platforms in general for years, decades. You can watch, you know, hundreds of videos online about like how Black creators are not treated fairly on Twitch, on TikTok, on YouTube. Like, this is not a new conversation, and that's originally why I wasn't even going to make this video to begin with. But then I just started, you know, I kept seeing it come up, and there was just some little topics and little thoughts that I had that I didn't necessarily think fit into their own, you know, like 50-minute video essay that I felt like this was the perfect opportunity to sort of just address. And I feel like, yeah, I could have talked about more things. If you're new to this channel, I do talk about a lot of social issues, and especially issues that relate to race and identity. That is something I'm passionate about, something I enjoy researching. I just felt like this was a very timely opportunity to just kind of bring up these issues. So yeah, that's pretty much what I want to end on. Again, I definitely wish it didn't take like the top creators to like talk about these issues for people to kind of take it seriously and have this be like a ongoing conversation. I wish it was more normalized for, you know, people with more privilege to just give us voices, amplify our voices, so we can actually make the change that needs to be heard. I wish people would, you know, realize the intersectionality that also plays into how our concerns are addressed, the gender roles, the gender expectations that play into it, the misogynoir, the favoritism. Like, there's a lot of different layers here about whose voice gets to be heard in these conversations, and I just really wish it was just more normalized for people who have just some greater degree of privilege and power to give us voices. You know, when we've been talking about issues and people haven't really been seeming to care, and then when the top creators at the top now talk about these issues, and now they seem to be coming up. It's kind of like with The Sims 4 and like the skin tones. That was a whole thing a few years ago, but I'm not gonna get into that today. I actually have a new video coming out on Wednesday. It is a analytical type video. It is a collaboration, and it's something I've been working on for weeks. So I'm really excited for you guys to see it. It's been months in the making. So just stay tuned for that. And yeah, my name's Asmara, and I hope to see you guys next time. Bye, y'all.